let's see. How about we start with some introductions, and then as people jump in, they'll just catch us right in the middle. So my name is Kelsey Hensey. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of Fathom, and so excited to be here with you guys today and this evening, I guess, tonight. Truly, what we do at Fathom, we cannot do without you. We are partners in getting all of that Fathom creates out into the world, and we think of you as part of our team. Even if you haven't worked with us yet, as soon as we work together, we consider you a teammate, and we are so grateful for each and every one of you. And so glad that you would just take the time tonight out of your whatever you're doing with friends, family, or maybe you wanted an activity, and we're so glad we have one for you. In these quarantine times, you never know. But we really do feel just honored that you would be even interested in hearing more about how the Fathom Way works and that sort of thing. So let's see, a little bit about me. I live in Dallas, 2 children. Let's see, is there like a fun fact about me? I don't really know. I don't know. Oh, you want to know the craziest thing about me? There's not a lot of people on here yet. This is a transcript people will know forever. That's great. I one time went to a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert when I was in high school, and the opening act was a surprise, and it turned out to be Snoop Dogg. And I got pulled onto the stage during a Snoop Dogg concert. So that's my brush with celebrity, Jed. Yours was with Mark Driscoll. Mine's with Snoop Dogg. So there. But yeah, I'm very glad you're here.
Yeah, yours is better.
I feel like mine could easily be upped. Anybody's welcome to up me. But yeah, so I'll be here. And so will 2 of our other Fathom team members. I'll let them introduce themselves. Jed, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm Jed Ostich. I'm a senior editor at Fathom. I actually met Kelsey as her TA in a writing class back years ago now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So I've had my ear tuned to Fathom for a little while. Yeah, if you have submitted before, there's a chance that you interacted with me at some point in the process. If you submit in the future, there's definitely a chance you will interact with me in the future or in the process. So no, I'm not a scary person with devil horns or anything like that. So exciting. I have 4 kids, the youngest of which is almost 6 months, and so my house is full of life and noise and complete and utter chaos. I live up in Grand Rapids, so we got snow and didn't destroy the entire state in the process, which was, left Texas just in time. I currently my day job, I work for a company called Our Daily Bread, which you're probably familiar with. You've probably seen it on your grandma's table, coffee table or the back of your church, something like that. It's fun, pays the bills. And fun fact about me, I once, at one point at my peak, I could juggle 7 balls for a protracted period of time. I had no girlfriend in college, so I had lots of free time.
And that's just a talent I do not have. Sophie, you want to go?
Yeah, my name's Sophie. I'm an associate editor at Fathom. I do a lot of the copy editing, so I'm one of the last people to look at your piece before it goes live. Very exciting. I live in Dallas, and I work for a company called Right Now Media. I'm the associate publisher there. And a fun fact about me, I used to live in France, so I speak French. Very exciting. It's not as cool as, I don't know, juggling, but that's me.
I think it's as cool as juggling.
Thank you.
It's a little bit cooler. It's way more practical.
That's great. Okay, so if you want to have subtitles on for this discussion, that is totally possible. They're automatically transcribing and creating the closed captions for this meeting. So if you want to turn those on, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little CC logo, and under it says live transcript. And if you press that little up arrow, it should give you the option to turn them on if you would like or need to read along. And I believe it should come up right in your screen. There's also a possibility you could find the transcript in your chat. I think it works a couple different ways depending on your Zoom. So yeah, with that, it's been about 5 minutes. I think we're going to get started. So here is our plan for the next little bit. We're going to start talking about the Fathom way of doing things. We're going to tell you what really makes a Fathom piece. And then we're going to talk to you about your submissions in particular. What happens when you email us? What are we looking for? That kind of thing. And then we'll move on to, if you got accepted, what are we hoping to get back from you, and how will that process work as you work with an editor, be it Jed or me, and eventually Sophie will see your piece too. That's all of kind of the submissions pieces, and the kind of nuts and bolts as well. So we're going to go through both of those. You're going to learn about what to expect out of each of us when you interact with us as well. So we'll tell you kind of what we're expecting, and we want to make sure you have a standard to hold us to. So we'll tell you a little bit about that as well. And then we will go through, we'll just do a quick overview of the next 3 themes that we have. We'll talk about what they are, kind of why we picked them, and maybe some possible ways for you to think about how to think about that theme, what might be interesting. And then at the end, like Sophie said earlier, maybe you weren't on here yet, but we'll have a Q&A at the end. Feel free to save your questions till then, but you also, if you would like to, can direct message Sophie on here, or you can just put it in the chat to everyone what your question is as we go along. And if it's super relevant, Sophie will jump in and make sure that we address it right then. And if it's good for us to hold till the end, she'll hold it till the end, like a good moderator does. So that is the plan, but we would love for you guys to interact with us. This is the time for you to ask us questions. You have 3 of us here to answer a question. It's really easy to forget something when you answer just one person. So don't be shy, jump in. We want to talk to you. That's why we're doing this. Yeah, so we are doing this, like I said, because we want to talk to you, and because we want to help you create the best work you can when you're working with us at Fathom. We really do think about this as a partnership. We are here for helping you do a great job of writing, as well as us finding some great work to publish. So it goes both ways. To do that, you need to know what makes a Fathom piece a Fathom piece. So what we consider to be something that fits in with the Fathom style is something that utilizes story and curiosity in order to help our readers contemplate their faith a little bit deeper than they already do. So I'm going to say it one more time. I wrote it out so that we get it the same both times. We want you to utilize story and curiosity to help our readers contemplate their faith a little more deeply than they already do. That's our goal. There are a handful of pieces about that. The first 2 are story and curiosity. Jed, do you want to talk about those things?
Yeah, so it's kind of becoming vogue now, but one of the things that's become increasingly apparent is that the way to capture people's imagination, or the way to convince people of your thought, or what you're trying to say, or even what you just want to get across, is through story. It slips behind people's defenses. It slips behind their rational way of processing thing, and attacks the imagination. So one of the big things, one of the pillars of Fathom pieces, if you've read the magazine at all, you'll notice that a lot, if not all of our pieces, are oriented around narrative. Usually it's some kind of personal narrative. Doesn't have to be. But we look primarily for pieces that really engage story in some aspect or another. It doesn't have to be telling a story, but using the format of a story, or using the hallmarks of a story is really important to us. We found that it does the best job of gently communicating and challenging people's, especially our readers' preconceived notions about how the world operates. So rather than walking in and saying, you should change your mind because of X, Y, or Z, a story invites them to experience the other side of the question at hand. And as a result, can often change people's mind. In tandem with that is curiosity. We don't want to be satisfied with just sitting where we've always been. So a tenet of Fathom is very much that investigative, question asking atmosphere. We want pieces, we want stuff that dives deeper into subjects that feel already thoroughly explored. If you feel like something has all the answers to it, then ask a question nobody's asked about it. We want to really ask tough questions. We're willing to ask tough questions, especially about the faith. We are a faith-based organization. We're a faith-based publication. The Christian faith is fundamental to what we are doing here, but we are also not against asking questions that challenge and dig deep and really press into what it means to be a person of faith living in this world. So if you're a curious person who loves to tell stories, we should be a good home for you.
Absolutely. And on top of that, there is kind of written into that statement, this idea that we want people to contemplate something. We want the work that we publish to leave people with something to think about. And that is the responsibility of the writer, is to create something that makes another person think about it for longer, that is sticky in their mind. And leaning into that curiosity piece and into that story piece are what are going to help you create these thoughtful moments. When you write in a way that highlights story and highlights curiosity, you're asking your reader to engage their own mind in their own understanding of their faith, of their world, how their faith is embodied in their life, all of those questions. So we really want to think about how we ask our people to engage their own mind in their understanding of their Christian faith in the world that they live in. And we say in there, the people who a little bit more than they already are. We do that because the readers of Fathom really are doing that already on their own. They are typically people who want to think deeper about their faith, who like a nuanced view of something, who are ready for the next question. The standard Fathom reader is typically different from like a standard Gospel Coalition reader or Desiring God reader. They're not necessarily coming looking for you to give them an answer as much as they are to give you the tools to think through something on their own. So we have a very contemplative audience. That's good for you to know as you're writing your pieces and your submissions. Yeah, great. Okay, so Sophie, Jed, anything to add to that before we move on?
Nope, that's pretty much the heart of Fathom.
There it is, right there. Doesn't take very long to say it. It takes a lot longer to do it. Okay, so next thing we want to talk about is what makes your submission stand out. And I am actually going to have you do that, Jed. What makes your submissions stand out? But when we say that, what we mean is when your email hits our inbox and you want us to consider your work to publish in an issue, a future issue of Fathom, when we get it, what makes us stop and consider that piece? What makes us go, that's really interesting. That's a possibility.
Right. And we get a lot of emails. Our submission email gets emails every single day, fills up our inboxes. And so it's in your best interest to write a submission that makes you stand out. Because the first, essentially the first impression you make with us is going to be that first email that you send. And so the things that will really make your submission, if you're submitting a pitch or you're submitting a completed piece, let me back up. If you're going to submit a completed piece, something you've already written, and you want us to take a look at it, please, please, please do the work of actually writing a pitch in addition to that. I cannot count the number of times I get an email saying, hey, I wrote this thing. Would you take a look at it? Love me, kind of thing. It's not a great first impression. So the things that are really going to make your pitch stand out are clear thesis. I want to know what it is you are trying to say or what it is you are trying to do. And if you can't, in your pitch, articulate that in a single sentence, to me, that says you haven't thought about your subject material or your concept or your idea enough to be able to write it well. So especially if it's a pitch for a piece you haven't written yet, if you can't articulate what it is that you want to say in a single sentence, I'm not really going to be inclined to want to jump on a thing or on the pitch that you're sending.
Yeah, I'm going to add on a little bit to that because the clear thesis is important also to help us help you. So if we know what you're trying to communicate, what you want to say, we can edit you better, and we can also come back around and be like, hey, that was a really interesting thesis. I'm not sure that's the best argument to make that point, or whatever it is that we could help you. If you don't articulate a clear thesis, it's easier for us to just say, probably not, than for us to be like, I can work with that.
Yep. Absolutely. And being able to communicate that is excellent. And it makes our job easier, and it makes us want to really to work with you, because it means the whole process is going to go so much smoother for you and for us. And it means that the thing that you create in the end is going to be a far more valuable contribution, not just to Fathom, but to your readers. What you say is going to have more meaning when you're clear about what it is you're trying to say. Another thing, we've talked about story already. I'd love to see story in your piece. So even if you're not doing a personal driven narrative, something that has that narratival story filled feeling is going to be far more compelling to me, especially when I get your emails, than something that's just a bunch of data, or here's an idea I'd like to write about. If you can show me, especially in your pitch, that you have a mastery of storytelling in the first couple of paragraphs that you write, that's really going to make your pitch stand out. It's going to grab my attention. It's definitely going to jump you to the top of the list for pieces that we're considering for upcoming issues, because it's one of our key value as an organization. So if you write your content with that in mind, it's going to mesh better with Fathom.
Can I add on to that too?
Yep, go for
it. So the story that you tell, I think a lot of times when we hear that word or that idea, like I want you to write a story, we think you want me to write just my story. And your story is a great thing to write about, and to be able to bring in the world around you that is your story. But it doesn't necessarily have to be your story that you're writing. It doesn't have to be about your life necessarily. We've had some excellent work that look at the stories of prisoners who are in solitary confinement and the things that they asked for and why. They're beautiful pictures of how narrative affects our minds when we read about an issue. So don't think necessarily, oh, I need to figure out my story to tell my story. It is a story. Be a storyteller of any sort.
Yep. In addition to that, we want cleverness. We really value cleverness as a magazine. The way that I articulate it is, if you come to me wanting to write about something that is already being talked about, that's pretty much a guaranteed way for me to say thanks, but no thanks. I want to see, so if you give me something, one of my favorite pitches I ever received was a guy who wrote and said, hey, I have a piece I wrote about whale poop. Do you want it? And I didn't need anything else. I was like, absolutely, I want to read this thing because that's fantastic. And he managed to bring beautiful threads of redemption and forgiveness together into a story about how whale feces have historically been used as perfume. And it was fantastic. And that's the kind of thing, and it also allows you to indulge your curiosity too. Ask questions about your life, ask questions about the world around you, ask questions that nobody else is asking. If you give me a pitch that's approaching a subject, even a subject that's in the news or in public conversation, but it's doing it from a direction or an angle that no one else is covering or no one else has taken, that will, that's my dream right there. I love to get those pitches because those make me excited to run them. They make me excited to talk with you and dig into your brain, because that means you're thinking differently about life. And that's exactly what we're looking for at Fathom. So if you have a clever angle on something, that's definitely going to help make your submission stand out. In addition to that, we want to connect everything to the biblical narrative in some aspect or another. Again, we're an overtly faith-based magazine. So if you're not intending to write something that has a kernel of faith or Christian life involved in it, we may not be the best place for you. but we also, we think and respect very highly the scriptures. So we are looking for stuff that handles them well. Every one of the editorial staff has higher, at least a bachelor's, if not a master's degree in theological studies of some kind. So we are looking for well written content that does interact with the Bible and does it well. Again, it doesn't have to be stodgy, it doesn't have to be academic. We want story-driven, narrative-driven, beautiful prose, but we do hope that you interact with the biblical narrative at some point, even if it's just to show the beauty of redemption in something that you've experienced or you've seen other people go through. And then, as I've kind of hinted at before, the thing that will really make your pitch stand out or your submission stand out is a well-crafted query letter or pitch letter. Your email makes 100% the difference. If you want help on writing that, there's an article, I think it's linked on the submissions page of Fathom. It's called Don't Freak Out. It's me walking through essentially what I want to see in a pitch letter. I can link that in chat here in a second too, if you'd like it. Yeah. So the TLDR is at the very beginning, your first paragraph, short paragraph, is your lead. Give me, before anything else, the absolute best demonstration of your writing. I want to see your best writing on display. That's the first thing I encounter. I want to see that. Second paragraph, give me the logic of what it is you're writing. Again, doesn't have to be long, but I want to see that you know what it is you're trying to say and how you're going to say it. And then if you're writing something, so say you're submitting a fiction piece, like a short story or something along those lines, that's harder to do a logic or to show the logic of, because there's not necessarily a logical argument in a short story, and that's good, and that's should be the case. But I still want to know that you know where you're going with your story and what you're trying to accomplish with it. And then at the end of that, give me the logistics. Then you can tell me who you are. Then you can tell me what you've done. That lends credibility to the subject you're writing on. You can give me the other logistics about when you think you can have it done or how long it's going to be and that kind of thing. A lot of people want to lead with that because they think they make the best impression first, and then they want to, based on my credibility, then then they'll go and tell me what they think they want. I want to know that you can write. So lead with that. That's your biggest asset in this process. So I think that's about it as far as, wouldn't you say, Kelsey, is there anything else you'd add to what makes submissions really stand out?
That's perfect. That's exactly right. I would say pitches that we get like that are incredibly rare. We get far less incredible pitches than we get poor ones or less robust ones. So they really will stand out. It's not like, oh, here's the bare minimum for how to be accepted at Fathom. That really does help. That really does take our attention towards you in a way that it might not otherwise. So we mean what we say, truth tellers. Okay, so that's what makes it stand out. Let's look at the other end of the other side of the coin real fast. What might get your submission rejected quicker than not? So first thing would be an attitude or arrogance or grandstanding. Humility is something we value very much at Fathom. We hope to see it weaved into our pieces, and we hope that you want to partner with us as much as we want to partner with you. So if you come to us in your pitches with an kind of an arrogance as like, you want me, like I'm just the best, we probably actually don't. So maybe just tone that part down a little bit. Or also this idea that sometimes people really want to convince us that we owe them a place, right? Or that they need it so bad for their own platform or whatever it is. That kind of thing is not something that we're super interested in. Also, like I said, we want to be partners. So we are going to interact with you as respectfully as we possibly can. We might not do it perfectly. We're just human beings, but our hope and our goal is to be incredibly respectful. So if you'll be respectful when you email us, that's great. If not, we are expecting you to not be respectful for the whole time we work with you. So regardless of how great the pitch or the submission, the whole manuscript you send us is, we will choose not to publish it if it looks like it just might not be a great working experience, right? We want to have a good time as much as we want to publish great work. So we're willing to work hard with you and just with a good attitude, we're looking for that. Okay. The other side of the cleverness coin is an unoriginal take. So some things that might help you think through, like, is this take not original? Here's some things we get a lot of. We get a lot of hot take current events thoughts, right? You woke up and you had a brand new thinking on the new mask mandate in Texas, or that it's not there anymore, and you want to talk about it and it needs to go out tomorrow. We don't do hot take, right? Part of how Fathom functions is actually anti-hot take in general, because we don't publish every day. We publish in a whole issue all at one time. So even the way that we're set up is to have you cultivate thoughtfulness on the issue that you are going to talk about, not just on just in general. We don't want you to be like, oh, I'm a thoughtful person, I want to talk about this hot topic thing. We want you to think about the thing you're going to write about for a while before you even tell us about it. So no hot take current events. And even like in your writing or in your pitch, you don't need to tell me about current events necessarily. Like, I do know that there's been a pandemic for a year. And so if your opening statement is, in the last year, there's been an ongoing pandemic, I'm like, next, right? So just think about what you're putting in there. I typically have the context that you have for the world. The next one is that kind of cookie cutter point of view, or an argument that you're going to get at a lot of other places. Like I said, there's really great work being done to answer questions directly, that kind of things other places, but it isn't here. So those just are pieces we're just not going to take most of the time. A piece that's based on a popular Bible story. I don't know that I can even go find everything we've been pitched about the Good Samaritan. Like so many things. So if it is just a really standard Bible story that you hear all the time, if you hear this Bible story and you think felt board for kids, we probably have gotten a lot of it before, right? So that does not mean you shouldn't pitch that thing at all, but that does mean if you want to talk to me about the prodigal son, or if you want to talk to me about the Good Samaritan, I would like to see a super nuanced take on that. I want you to pick that thing up, turn it on its ear, and then look at it again, and maybe turn it another revolution or two before you've sent that pitch on that thing, right? And you might even acknowledge in your pitch that what you're sending is on a topic that you hear, that people hear a lot about, right? Kat Armstrong wrote a whole book on the woman at the well, and her point is, you think you know, but you don't know. That's an interesting take. I'll take that all day long. But just like this is what the Good Samaritan did, we should be the Good Samaritan. Where that's probably not going to work out. Okay, the other two, I want you to hear me say this before I tell you what these last two are, because we cherish being story keepers as much as storytellers. So what you tell us about your life is an honor for us to know. You have probably gone through something that's traumatic and hard and difficult in your life. And it was probably work for you to write out a story or even a pitch about something that's happened in your life, right? We treasure that you would share that with us and recognize that that's a really big deal. That also means, because things like suffering and death are universal, that we do hear about it a lot. Chronic pain is something we hear about a lot. There are diseases we hear about a lot. So when we get your story, we're thinking through not just whether your story is relevant this time, but if we've published it before, right? Have we recently talked about the thing that you are already telling us has happened in your life? That kind of a way of thinking. What we're not saying is we don't want to hear about your pain and suffering. We do. And like I said, it is truly an honor to be a story keeper as much as it is a storyteller. We want to hear them, but we do hear a lot about those moments in our life. So think about how you want to tell somebody about that pain, that suffering, that experience that you went to that has changed you in a way to do it. Maybe that's different than what's already there. It might mean you need to peruse past Fathom issues for specifically what your story, what might look like your story, or might have the same takeaway as what your story is. So I hope you heard that right. We really do love and appreciate that you would honor us with your stories. There will be some times where even with the story that's really hard in your life, we won't be able to take it because we have done something like that. Okay. Let's see, the next one is not knowing what is readily available to our readers. So not just through us, but through other outlets. Excuse me. I think I brought this handy cup of hot water. Okay, so we get emails every single issue where somebody says in their email, no one is talking about fill in the blank. I'm going to talk about it because no one is talking about it. But actually, it's just a life experience that you've just had. And so you haven't been aware of the fact that it's been talked about quite a bit. And if you are unaware that it has been talked about quite a bit in the general reader's world, then you probably aren't going to be giving me that clever take, that unexpected take that we really like to publish. So look around, right? If you're thinking nobody's talking about this, double check. Just see if they are or they aren't. Pitching something that's really similar to what's in our last issue. We do a lot of some things that are similar. We'll take a new angle on the same topic many times, but check particularly the most recent issue. And it would behoove you to know that we've already said the thing you want to say just now. So we probably won't say it twice in a row. It's good to know.
I'll jump in on that too and say Fathom, what we publish in Fathom has a much longer life than some other publications might. So even pieces that we have from 3-4 years ago often still make the rounds and still get shared and still get read. So yes, I would say read the most recent issue, but if you have time, I would go back even further and just get an idea of what we have done as a magazine, because we do value the longevity of our pieces. So.
Yeah, that's great. And then repackaging a piece, really a thought from something that's making the rounds, particularly on social media. If you see an awesome Atlantic article and you're like, we need to talk more about that, and you just want to extend to that point, like we've said over and over, extending the point isn't necessarily what we would love to do. What we would love to do is see a new take. If that makes you curious about it and you ask something new, great. But just more of what is currently really popular might get us more clicks, honestly, but is not exactly the kind of thing we'd love to publish. So keep that in mind. Kind of already talked about hot takes. Also, the Fathom approach, if you've spent much time reading Fathom, is not didactic and it's not preachy. You aren't going to find very many. There are, I believe, maybe a handful, but there really aren't very many pieces that are like, here's what I think about prayer, and here are the 4 things you can do to change your prayer life, right? That's just not a Fathom piece. There are really great places that have that for people already. So we're not trying to do that thing. Same thing with it feeling very preachy. If you are a pastor or you are a teacher, it's okay to lean into your strengths, but we aren't trying to publish sermons necessarily. So just be aware of kind of the tone that you take and how you structure your writing or your pitch or submission to us in that way. And then the last thing that is just going to be a real hard no for us is an unnecessary takedown. We're not the place that you go to air your grievances necessarily. We are for challenging the perspectives that need to be challenged, but we are not for, I really dislike this person, I really dislike this movement, I'm really against so-and-so, and this piece is against them, that, this, whatever it is. We're not your place for a takedown. Those also do really well, so that's unfortunate for us, but there's probably somewhere else that would be more willing to have that kind of a tone, but we're not going to do that either. So none of those things. Okay, let's say you wrote us an excellent pitch, you killed it, you knocked it out of the park. We accepted it and we're so pumped to partner with you to put it in an issue of Fathom. What happens? What do we hope to see you turn into us? So now we're changing from pitch, you're emailing us, to like actually what you're going to send us. You can send us a full manuscript. Actually, if you've never written with us before or not been accepted before, a full manuscript is really helpful for us. You write that great pitch. We like your pitch and we can read your manuscript because we're going to ask for that from a first-time person who's going to publish with us for the first time before we promise any sort of publication regardless. So feel free to go ahead and put that in. But if you've pitched, there's no manuscript, what are we looking for when you send it to us? We want to open that manuscript after we've accepted your pitch. And I tried to put pitch and submission together. Mission is not the word. What we want to see is organized thoughts. So your structure. We want to know you can guide someone to that thesis, right? You could just have no order in the way that your piece goes and you're randomly repeating yourself or making the same point multiple times, or maybe it's just not a logical flow. We would love to see organized thoughts. That's huge for us. Curated language. Go ahead.
Well, I'm gonna jump in real quick. So one of the maxims that we use is you can fix bad writing, but we can't fix bad logic. So there have been instances where we've accepted pieces or accepted a pitch. We get the piece, and when reading through it, there's just no fixing the logic. And we ultimately end up having to decline publishing the piece because we just can't do it. So yeah, please spend a lot of time outlining. It will, if you're not an outliner, outlining will help a lot in making sure your logic is solid.
That's great. And Jed, I want you to jump in a lot here too. Talk about curated language. Simple is best. If you can use a simple word that people are going to understand over just a big, exaggerated, long word, that's better. We're not trying to talk over our audience. We're trying to talk to our audience. Our goal is for them to understand, not for them to think that we're smart, right? So we're writing simply wherever possible. That doesn't mean it isn't beautiful. You can write beautifully and simply at the same time. You can write incredibly persuasively and simply at the same time. So simple's best. Don't drown us in modifiers. I think we are prone to believe that the more we feel passionate about something and the more we want to have you be in this place and time with us, we should just like keep adding on the modifiers, but actually it's just super distracting for your reader. You can use better nouns when you're doing your writing, much better verbs, and not need your adverbs and your adjectives like a crazy person. If you're just like sprinkling them on like a cupcake sprinkles on top, that's not ideal for us, right, Jed?
Yeah, I was going to say you'll get your piece back absolutely covered in red because those will all be murdered. Yeah, so if you do the murdering of your modifiers first, then it'll look so much prettier when it comes back from editing.
That's right. And part of that is, there's a chat down here. Should I be looking at this? Oh, never mind. Sorry. Now I don't even know what happened to there. There we go. Back in action. Modifiers are learning how to use them really well, and learning when you do not have to use them is part of cultivating your voice. Your voice is not a string of modifiers. It's just not. That's not a gold standard in writing. And we want to help you become a better writer, right? We don't just want even this one piece to be better. Our like grand lofty goal would be that if after you've worked with Fathom, you would be a better writer than when you came in the door, right? We are for you. We want you to be better. So know that when we're going through and we're like, hey, I'm taking out all of these adjectives and all of these adverbs, like, man, this description is just like it's too much. It's too flowery or whatever that is. That isn't because we just like think you're terrible, right? It's because we want you to be better, and we are for you finding your voice in a way that is a craft of writing. So we're always for you. Keep that in mind. Write strong sentences. That's the same idea. Concreteness is as important as simplicity. So make sure that, yeah, there you go. Jed, you can talk about concreteness.
So The problem of being an adult is that you work in a world and you move in a world and you think in a world of abstractions.
Hmm.
If you've ever listened to a kid talk about his or her world, it is so fun because they can only exist in concretes. My son the other day, my 3-year-old, picked up something and goes, "Dad, what's this chicken leaf?" I was like, "Chicken leaf?" He'd found a little feather, but the only way that he could describe it was to use words, concrete words that he knew. And so he called it a chicken leaf. You know, it looks like a leaf and it came from a chicken. So that's the kind of concreteness that we're talking about. Especially as soon as you start moving into things like the beautiful part of the Christian faith, redemption, hope, salvation, restoration, the things that really make Christianity worth following. 9 times out of 10, in fact, probably 10 times out of 10, when we start writing about those things, we instantly switch into the abstract. We're really good about being concrete with the dark, the dismal, the evil, the hard, the difficult. But when we get to the hopeful things, we switch into the abstract and completely lose all the energy and momentum that we've built in our writing. So concreteness, that's my number one thing. And if you get edits back from me, I guarantee you will have at least a couple saying this needs to be more concrete.
Yeah, that's great. Mine is soul. If something affects your soul, I need to understand that better. Right. If you felt it in your soul, I'm probably not feeling it in mine if you told it that way. And I want to feel it in mine. So help me out. Let's see. Okay, educated opinions. We clearly want you to have done your research. Theologically, like Jed said, you are sending it to an audience who all has a degree in theology at some place in time. And we do have discussions on the things you send us on whether or not we theologically can say the things that you say. So for sure that, but also just generally speaking, if you were talking about a topic that interests you, show us where your interest is thriving. Where else can we bring us into that interest, not just to your mind, but to wherever it is existing, right? So an educated opinion is great. Persuasion, we want you to write very logically. We also want you to show and not just tell us. So think about that art of persuasion as the storytelling that Jed talked about earlier, as much as you think about concrete fact. So those things can very much be married. You can have lots of facts and also tell a story at the same time. We're not asking you to be magical, right? You can even tell us where you ask for some help in making some connections, things like that, and that would be fine. But just be persuasive. And then the last thing I'll say here, and then you, Sophie and Jed, y'all can jump in, is care for your reader. I want to know that your story is something that your story personally, or the story you are telling, is something that you want to impact the person who is reading it, not just you for writing it. It's very easy to tell when a piece feels self-serving. I want to read a piece that is other-serving. So think about them when you're writing. And that does mean that simplicity matters. We want you to use words and that they are going to understand. I said that earlier, but that is a way for caring for them and showing that you care for them. So think about them as you're going through as well.
And we will help you with that process in the editorial. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, but we will, everything that Kelsey just covered, if you don't do 100% perfectly on your first draft, that's part of our commitment to you as our writers, is helping those things improve.
Yeah.
We love to develop long-term relationships with writers. And so our goal is to cultivate you so that, 5-6 pieces down the road, everything you're sending us, we just smile and just say, great, just gonna put it on the presses just as it is.
It's just the best. Okay, let's talk nuts and bolts real quick, how the process works. Sophie, you want to run with that?
Yes. So basically, after all of that wonderful information, I'm the detail-oriented human about the actual logistics. So what you should send us when we ask you to send your article or poem or whatever is a file that's easily formatted for us. So Word is great. That's our preference. We won't edit directly into a Google Drive link. If you send it to us, we'll probably end up copying it into Word. And And yeah, that's typically what we end up doing. We would love for you to try to give your piece a title. Even if you think it's dumb, just give it something and we can work with it and try to spruce it up. But it really helps us out if there's something to have at the top of the page. We would love for you to put your first and last name at the top in the header. That just helps keep things organized, keep track of everything. If you could 1.5 or double space it as well, that really helps with like organizing everything and getting through all the edits and not getting everything jumbled. We also need, we'll need a bio from you, and we don't want something that's like 50 sentences long, and we don't want it to be about like how much you love cats, though I'm very glad you like cats. But the things that we look for in a bio, we want it to be pretty short, but if you want to include your education, your vocation, your location, you're seeing how we're going, publication, if you've been published, and social media, your handles, if you would like to include them. So I'll say those again. You can include your education, your vocation, your location, your publications, and social media handles if you would like to. So basically this is kind of how it will go. We've talked a little bit about like the more constructing your narrative, your story, your article, but this is how it will go when you actually submit. So you will be getting a note back saying if your piece is being considered or if it's been rejected, and that'll probably be by Kelsey or Jed or Colin would be my guess. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And then I wouldn't expect those right away. As we've already talked about, we get submissions like crazy and we all have day jobs. So we aren't just constantly checking the email, like who submitted. So it will take time. It just depends on the month. Like last month we had, crazy ice storm in Texas. So me, Kelsey, and Colin all had no power. So we were just, figuring out life. So yeah, you'll get an answer eventually. And we'll let you know if it's being considered or rejected. And then we'll give you an update and with a definitive answer on your piece and then some timelines for edits and publication. By that time, we'll know when the issue is being published, roughly. And then we'll return edits to you for review and approval. And then once you've approved it, your piece will be passed off to me and I will copy edit it and make sure it is as beautiful as it can be. And then we'll move it into our platform and it'll be published and you'll see it blasted everywhere all over the internet. It's so exciting. So that's basically the simple process. It's nothing too crazy. I wouldn't expect to have to go back and forth too much with your editor. Hopefully you've written an amazing piece and everyone's super pumped about what you've written. And then from your editors, sometimes I do edit some pieces, so this will include me as well. Here's some things that you can expect from us. Appreciation that you're sharing something important with us. Like Kelsey already said, we really do cherish keeping your stories as well as hearing them and publishing them. So you'll likely hear gratitude on our end and a vast appreciation for you and your willingness to write for us because we are pumped and we love partnering with you. We'll give you some feedback, kind of like what we already said about structure, thought, logic. Those will probably be the more direct edits about organizing everything and making sure that you make the strongest argument possible, that your logic is tight, that your story makes sense, that people walk away knowing what they just read and understanding what you were saying. That's what we want. We'll give you feedback on style and sentence structure, all those things that Kelsey just mentioned and Jed too, about how you're saying what you're wanting to say. And we want to make you sound as clear as possible. And yeah, like we said, we want people to understand what they've just read. And we'll give you edits. And our goal when we give you edits, like we've said before, is to make you the absolute best that you can be. We want you to shine bright in our issue, and we want to advance you as a writer. So we aren't sitting here with our arms crossed and a red pen in hand, angrily ripping up your piece, just like to the sheer joy of it. We are editing it with care. We really do care about what you're saying. We care about you. We care about you as a writer. And so the edits that we make are not harsh or angry. That's not our motivation. Our motivation is to make you awesome and to make your piece awesome. So know that that is what we're coming at it with. We're not your angry ninth grade English teacher. I had one of those. I don't know about you guys. So we also want to represent Fathom well. So that is another thing, like we've mentioned what we look for. Those are the things we'll be editing for. So we want to, as well as represent you, we want to represent us too. It's a partnership. And a lot of times those edits are going to come back to you not in track changes, and Jed and Kelsey can speak to that too. It'll likely come back to you as just a clean copy with all of our edits already made. And you can read through that and let us know what you think. There might be some comments in there for you to consider and to rework. But our hope is that there wouldn't be too much to change and go back and forth on. So that is, I mean, I don't know if Kelsey or Jed, if you guys have anything to add to all of that.
Yeah, I'll say one thing. So a writer's voice, I feel like, is often one of their most precious things. And Kelsey, Sophie, and I are also, we've done our fair share of writing as well. And so I say this as one writer to another. As an editor, we genuinely do care about your voice. But I've encountered often writers that when they get back the clean copy edits, they look at it and they read through it, and their first response is, I wouldn't say it like that, or those aren't my words, or I didn't write that. And there's this feeling like this isn't my voice. I want you to know that from our perspective, we care deeply about your voice, and the editorial process is our way of helping you refine and shape that voice. Now, I realize there is not everyone is comfortable with having their words changed, but I would challenge you by saying, if you want to work in a world where you have to interact with editors, that's going to be a process you'll have to get used to. So I just want to say that, I mean, it is a point of feedback I've gotten from writers in the past, concern about their particular voice in their writing. Know that we know that you have a voice, and also know that our intention is not to stamp that out or to completely transform it, but to make it better.
Yeah.
And unless you're, Stephen King, chances are you're not quite good enough of a writer to tell us that we can't change anything at all that you've written. So
I don't see him on this call, so. I will see too, one of my most positive, like I said, I have done some of the editing. One of my most positive interactions with the writer was, it was a writer who was writing about something deeply personal, and she was sharing part of her story that was really hard and difficult. And I ended up having to take out part of this story, not because I wanted it to be misleading, but because what she had added in was taking away from the main point of what she was trying to say. And her initial reaction, and I was, trying to explain why I did what I did. And it was not malicious, just to make her other point shine brighter. And she originally kind of didn't like that idea and was like, well, this is my story. I don't want to take a big part of it out. And after we talked about it, we realized the piece was stronger without it. And she ended up loving the piece. And it was a really fun interaction to kind of go back and forth and explain and walk through that. So just know that there might be moments like that where it is a hard thing, like your story, that gets not changed, but just refined, so that focused, that's a better word, focused, so that you can get your main point out.
Mm-hmm.
And then know that our hearts are not malevolent, but benevolent. When we do that, we're trying to make your piece shine as bright as it can. And I keep saying that, but it's what I have in my brain. So
yeah. So if you get back something that is there, in particular, if there's one or two edits, you're like, man, I really have some questions about that. We are assuming the best about you. We would love for you to assume the best about us, that we are working on your behalf, and we'd be so happy to talk about them. That is part of our job, and we want to explain the places that you have questions and work together so that you love it as much as we love it. We will get to that place together, and if we get to a place where we're not on the same page, then that's okay, and you could go somewhere else and see how it goes. That's not a problem at all, and that also doesn't make us upset one way or the other. But just know that any edits we make, we're happy to talk about. They were not haphazard, and we're just so for you. Okay, last thing we'll do real quickly, and we'll answer some questions, some themes. So we have 3 themes coming up. The quick deadline that is the end of this week, March 12th, is history. The theme is history. If you have been doing a whole lot of social media reading, you can tell that history is being talked about a lot and coming up more and more. It's part of major books that we're seeing. Jesus and John Wayne. There is a historical book. She's a historical professor. So the history just keeps coming back up. We talk about how it affects us now that we've not walked any path to where we are. We've not just like transported here, right? We got here through a means and a way to this cultural moment that we're in. So talking about how history has affected where we are now is something we would really like to see in this issue. We would also love to see you revealing some history that's easy for us to skip over or maybe not to think about. Give us the breakdown of people, maybe even if it's just a person who has impacted the world that we've not considered before, history we've forgotten, or maybe history we've retold ourselves in a way that could be inaccurate, right? Pick up a piece of history that seems common and look at it from that new angle, ask a new question about it. So we would love for you to interact with it that way. Your personal history is fair game too, but we would love for it to feel like history, right? Not just your present ongoing story. So if it goes back generations in your family, or you learned something about your grandparents, we had a piece in a past issue that would have been great in this issue, where somebody wrote about finding out about the racism in their grandparents' family line and what he had to do in his mind with that, and how he processed that. That would have been a great piece to come in here, but make it feel history driven. That would be awesome. And then the next one for the deadline for it is April 5th, is the theme of rethink. So sort of similar to what the history is helping us do, is rethink something. I want to know about the value of changing your mind. I want to know a time where you or someone else has changed their mind and why it mattered. I want to talk about how you watched somebody make a decision that was hard because they learned something new. They were open to that sort of a change. So this idea of rethinking could go a lot of different ways, but we want to really lean into that idea of changing your mind, of taking something that mattered to you, and all of a sudden it being different. I have a good friend who works with an organization that helped Burmese families find basically education at these boarding schools, more or less. But when they started learning about what they were doing, they realized that actually what they should be doing is figuring out how to find education so these people could stay with their families. And they redid their entire organization. They restructured it all, and they took all of these kids back to their families and worked with their families to find new systems of education that would work so that they didn't leave their households, right? That was a huge change that came from them learning really what was some really disheartening things about this organization they had poured their life into. And what they could have done was just held on to it and been like, no, we know better. If we just keep going, we'll see the fruit of it. But instead they said, you know what, we should learn from that. And they changed their ways. It was just a beautiful story to me when I heard her telling it. So this idea of rethinking, something like that. And then the third one is transcendence. There's been some really interesting talk about transcendence these days. If you get John Stark's newsletter, he wrote about how there's this whole cohort of people looking for transcendence on their Peloton bike, right? What does our culture long for? What are the ways that they are seeking transcendence? What do we think transcendence says about us? How are we using transcendence either to accomplish a goal or to be an extension of our identity, or whatever that could look like? We would love for you to think about that topic as well. Anything specific on those, Jed and Sophie, y'all want to throw in there?
On the history one, I will say that if you send us a piece that's trying to interact with modern, like current events kind of history, probably won't take it. Unless you can show some sort of trajectory that's developed over, hundreds of years. Probably not looking for current event kind of history stuff. So that's just an FYI. Same on the rethink one. Not same, but my challenge to you is to think about what kinds of things people will probably say about the subject and then try to say something different. So rethink probably don't want to take conversion stories. I love conversion stories.
You don't like it when you loved Jesus.
Yes.
Don't tell us about that.
Yeah. No, but it's one of those deals where it's like those are going to be the I mean we may publish a few, but those are the things that we're going to get a lot of. So my recommendation is just to try to attack it from a different angle.
Yeah.
And then on the Transcendence one, stuff that interacts with how our culture is pursuing transcendence would be absolutely fantastic. And then in that same vein, if you are capable of and willing to interact with how Christianity not in the West, so Christianity in the East, handles the question. I am one of the big things I'm always looking for is how the Christian faith is practiced not in the United States and not in Europe. So if you have the ability to interview someone, or you've had the experience with Christianity in the East, or something along those lines, I would love to get those kinds of perspectives. So transcendence is a bigger thing in Eastern Christianity. Anyway.
Yep, that's great. Okay, let's do some Q&A and we'll get y'all out of here. And feel free to pop out if you want to pop out. But if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. Send them to Sophie. We'll let Sophie be the person.
I have one for you. Arthur asked, your site asks for pitches, but how does that work considering the posted deadline for issues? So like, I think there's kind of two questions in this. So how do we know when the deadlines are? And then also, does every pitch have to coincide with the theme?
Yeah, so the deadlines, when you signed up for this contributors email, which is new, we understand that's been hard to follow when the themes are, and this is one of our ways of trying to solve that issue. If you are signed up for that contributors email, you're going to get 3 themes at a time, which is at least 3 months of work, if not 4, ahead of time for us. So the deadline will be there in that email with each one of those themes. And then as far as themes go, we typically take about 80% of what we publish in an issue is theme driven. If you have an excellent idea that has nothing to do with the theme, we want to hear your excellent idea. It does not have to be thematic. So remember that if you just have something great, send it our way. 80-20 standard.
And often if we get a piece that's fantastic, but we're already full on the issue and it's on theme, we do roll those over. Every month we hold pieces over for a future issue, just because it's a piece that we love, we believe in, but the timing just wasn't right for one reason or the other. So. Yeah,
and as far as like pitching and getting a response, depending on when you pitch in the cycle, you could be very long time waiting and very short time waiting for a response. That was a very strange sentence, but very long time waiting, very short time waiting. To hear back from us, because if you are pitching when we're kind of in the middle of the issue that's going out right now, then we're probably not even going to think about it till after the deadline for pitches, because we want to consider not just your piece individually, but the issue as a whole. So we're thinking through how it all works together, not necessarily just whether or not your piece was great. So remember that too. We're going to, you might email us and you got us on the day that we're making these decisions, and you're going to hear back in a few hours or the next day. And then it might be a month before you hear from us on some other pitches. We're going to try to do better about saying we got it, but we're just trying, we're making an effort to do that. Yeah.
We literally get hundreds of pitches every month. So it's yeah, we'll get back to you.
We're working hard, I promise.
Yeah.
So what's the, Shelby asks, what's the target length for a submission if there is one?
Jed?
That's a great question. I am personally inclined to want longer pieces over shorter pieces. I believe with longer pieces, you have more room to develop more thoroughly an idea. The longer you go, if you go over 1,000 words, I'm going to ask that you include subheadings in your piece, which is why I recommended outlining initially, because it allows you to break up your thought into concepts. If you don't include subheadings, we will put them in there. Like, that's just part of the process for building a cohesive argument. My words now, or I'd say between 1,000 and 1,500 words is what we're looking for an article. Short story, no fewer than 3,000. You need a lot of room for a short story to actually breathe and be a good story. We have taken longer form articles. Those are kind of things you have to earn, because if we're going to put 7,000 of your words on our site, they have to be really good words, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work for you and for us for people to not read them. So very long articles, we need to know we can get people to read them. You don't want to sit and write them and then be like, hey, we had 10 folks get halfway through it, so it's for y'all and for us and for our readers.
So Rachel asks, should we mention the theme we are writing in our pitch?
That'd be
or
great.
Should it be obvious from your pitch?
No, that'd be awesome. Even if it was the first word of your subject line, if it was like history and whatever dash, and then you have a subject line, that'd be great.
Yeah, it helps us understand what it is you're trying to get your piece, or what because not everybody's work is going to be immediately evident as how it ties into a theme. So it helps us know what you were expecting.
Arthur asked, what is your feeling about multiple pitches or submissions?
If you within the same, so if we get several submissions from the same person in the same month for the same theme, chances are we will only consider one of them. They're just, we get too many submissions to look at 3 or 4 from the same person in the same month. We do have people who pitch us almost every month for every single theme. That's fine. That's great. We love to see repeat readers, and especially as we build a relationship with you, the process will become smoother and faster. So yeah.
If you pitch without a finished manuscript and it's accepted, when will the manuscript be due?
Typically,
Hannah, sorry.
I give anywhere between a week and 10 days for turnaround on manuscripts. If you write and you say, if you give me an idea of the time frame when you can have a manuscript done by in your pitch, you're like, this is my idea, from the date of acceptance, I can have a finished manuscript to you in 2 weeks. That will give me, that's a lot, that's helpful because it helps me understand how fast or how slowly you write. And so we can set reasonable expectations there. But barring that, usually I say between a week and 10 days.
Arthur has another question. He's asking the greatest questions. He said, how many essays or articles will you publish per issue?
So we typically publish about 30 to 35 pieces an issue, but that includes poetry as well, or any short stories. So that's what you can expect. Sometimes our poetry is like 5 to 8 different pieces. It just sort of depends on what we get in that time, but we publish 30 to 35. And
let me just say, if it hasn't been apparent to you yet, we publish short stories and poetry, which is a very unique publishing opportunity. I would say, at least in the Christian publishing world, but also just in the greater publishing world as a whole. So if you're a short story fiction writer and you want a place to get your stuff featured, we are a place that wants short stories, and we want poetry. So, and if you send poetry, there's an email address specifically for that, even in the submissions paragraph on our about page. So you can send it straight to our poetry editor, Rachel.
We also publish book reviews, and we also, there's another thing I had in my brain. I don't remember what the other thing was. There are other things.
Movie stuff. We've done that before.
Excerpts from books. So if you're publishing a book and you'd like to have kind of not a public, or what a publicity relationship. That's not really, we're not necessarily here for publicity, but if we really believe in the contents of your book, we've run excerpts from books or bonus material that didn't make it into the finished manuscript. We've run that on our site too. So.
Also, the thing I was going to say is we will sometimes partner with artists. So if you know, would like to feature their work, we sometimes partner with them. Linda asked, are the poems always on theme?
No, it's about the same. Somewhere between 70 and 80% tend to be on theme, and then the 20 or 30% tend to be just really great poetry. It's typically not the kind that rhymes. I'll give you a hint. If you want to know what Rachel's looking for, it's not that.
We have another column on that too. So if
Yeah.
Let me find it for you.
The amazing Sophie.
Yeah. This is really neat. We don't often get to see the faces of our writers. So
yeah, it is really fun.
Fun experience for us too. Hopefully we're not a disappointment in the in that category. Well, I know Kelsey and Sophie won't be disappointed.
Oh. I love that the transcript just changed our names, Kelsey and Sophie, to Calcium and something. I can't remember. I don't see what it was before. Spoke, I think. So that's right. We need big names. There they are.
I've gotten this question a few times. Is there a physical publication?
There is not a physical publication. We have one physical publication of the works we have published. It's an anthology that can be purchased. It's actually printed, it's printed when you purchase it. And then we have just started creating other resources. We have a Bible study that is printed. It's on 1st and 2nd Thessalonians called Belonging to the Day. And if you go to fathommag.com, there's a shop place at the top on the little bar. It's a shop, and you can purchase it there. But those are the only hard copy things that we have done right now. There isn't a short-term plan by any means to publish outside of digitally, other than those things I just said.
Nice. I think I got all the ones in the chat. If I forgot one, please remessage me.
Okay. Anything else? Give y'all another minute or two. Remember, this is your time. This is your moment. We want to hear your questions. We love answering them. We think you're great. Holler at us.
So the question about multiple submissions was about multiple submissions to other magazines. So what happens if someone has pitched the same article to multiple magazines?
You want to take it, Jed? You want me to?
Yeah, we prefer that if you're pitching us an article, that you're pitching us an article. If you're pitching other, put it this way, because this happens on a semi-regular basis. If you've pitched an article, it doesn't, we don't respond to you immediately in the first week or two, and you get it accepted somewhere else, and you have to write back to us saying, hey, please remove this from consideration. It was accepted at such and such a place. It's going to mean that we're going to consider your work less often, just because we know that you're pitching at other places. And so the chances of us having first dibs on that is fairly low. So my recommendation would be, if you want to pitch something multiple places, it sounds callous, but I wouldn't make Fathom one of them on your list.
You really are counting on Jed, though, to remember that has happened. He might.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm going to forget.
That's fair. It's just, and it goes for other publications too. Part of it is a respect thing to giving an editor first right of refusal. Mm-hmm. It's not, there's nothing legal or anything like that. You're welcome to do what you'd like with your writing, but it doesn't.
And if you know you want to submit it to somewhere else, you can let us know in your original pitch. Like, I wrote this for Fathom, but if you don't want it, I would like to share it somewhere else in a month or whatever that looks like.
For sure. If we don't take something, you're welcome to use it or send it somewhere else. Yeah.
But if it's got like a super short time on it and you're like, hey, I got this piece, I think you're going to like it. I wrote it for you. I'm going to send it next week to Christianity Today. We're going to be like, send it. Like, a week is probably not going to do for us. You're better off to go somewhere else. So just a heads up.
Hannah asked, could we pitch something that we have already posted on our personal blog?
You can. We have definitely done some reworks of personal blog posts before, particularly if it's just like a blog you're working through with some of your friends and it's kind of like a trial run, right? But if you have a blog that has pretty substantial circulation, or if you want us to run it like word for word, that's pretty unlikely that we're going to do it that way. We would prefer to publish original content.
And then Liliana asked, does a pitch for a poem differ from a pitch for an article?
Jed?
Typically with poems, if you send the poem to the best the best impression you can make is sending the poem to the poem submission email. Like if you get that part figured out, you will be miles ahead of everyone else who sends us poetry.
Yes.
No, I feel bad for Rachel because I'm forever forwarding her stuff from the it's been sent to the wrong submission. No, you don't need a formal pitch for poetry. Usually a few sentences describing what it is, kind of the inspiration for the poem, and kind of what you hope to accomplish with it should be good enough for Rachel. Do realize though that your email is a first impression that you were making with Rachel. So I wouldn't be informal or calloused with it. If you read the link that Sophie posted in the chat, it kind of gives you Rachel's thoughts as our poetry editor on how she thinks about and interacts with submissions. That'll be a valuable resource for you.
Yep.
Cool. The email for that is it poetry at Fathom Mag, or is it just Rachel at Fathom Mag?
It's poetry at Fathom Mag. The other thing that we said in our emails to you was that we have a style guide for you to read that will give you a lot of what we already said tonight, but just a good refresher. You should pull that up and check it off. There's a checklist, a writing checklist that will give you some things to think about before you send stuff to us, and not really just to us, to anybody. That writing checklist is going to help you no matter where you want to get published. Same thing with the Fathom style. That is going to be more specific to us, but will help you make sure it works together. We could probably throw that in the chat too.
Oh, one other thing I'll say, if you send in a pitch and it doesn't get accepted, you're always invited to ask for not for clarification as to why didn't you like this, but in the sense of like, what could I do better, or what would have made this piece more suitable for the thing. Most of the time, I'm more than willing to explain kind of what we would have looked for instead, or how the piece could have been improved or tweaked to fit what we're looking for. I can't promise that kind of feedback all the time, and I'm definitely not promising just informal editorial feedback. So if you email me saying, hey, would you take a look at this piece and tell me what you think of it? I'm not going to do that.
Even if we want to, it's hard to find the time for that.
Yeah. But that being said, I'm more than happy to provide feedback on rejections, because that will hopefully help you continue to grow as a writer and as a pitcher.
Also, if you are super nerdy and you want to know what style guide we use for copy editing, etc., it's the Chicago Manual of Style. So if you really want to dive into that, that's what we use.
It's Sophie's favorite book, second only to the Bible.
Yes.
That's right.
Molly asks, should we expect a response to our pitches either way, accepted or rejected?
Yeah, for sure. We plan to email everyone back. If you haven't heard from us, particularly if you see on social that we're talking about upcoming pieces and you've not heard anything from us, let us know. Try to find the balance between following up and nagging. Those are different, and there are a lot of people. And even if we're working, even if we've talked to you once already, like we said, at a minimum, we're publishing 30 people an issue. That's a lot of emails. So if you're like, hey, I sent this 2 days ago, I didn't get a response. Did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see it? It's like, probably just, take a deep breath. But we also have had things where I thought I've responded, Jed thought he's responded, and we wanted it and it just went through the cracks, right? So that's going to happen some too. So feel free to follow up. I also had a thing February 9th. My email glitched, and I had 4 emails go to writers who we had accepted, and I was telling to wait for edits for approval, and I had not heard back from 4 of these people. It was really mind-boggling to me, only to find out that none of them had gotten that email. I don't know what happened. So I only found that out when they emailed me back and said, hey, did you ever get edits to me? I was like, yeah, I'm waiting on you, right? But they hadn't gotten them. So yes, follow up with us.
Cool.
Okay. All right.
Here's one. Wait one moment, let me read it. Oh, this question was about John. Is John still working with us?
John, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, he is. He has been kind of taking an extended sabbatical to think about video more at Fathom. So he's moved off of doing any of the editorial necessarily, and he's on to thinking about video content for us. Talking to him tomorrow, in fact, about his new plan for that. So you'll be seeing more of him, but it is in that capacity now. It's his preference. If you haven't seen like the couple videos that we have that he's done, they're excellent. You should see the one on communion. It's particularly great. Accessibility, there's one on accessibility in your churches.
All right, I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
So
Y'all, we're so grateful that you came here. We really do appreciate all of you, and we look forward to seeing you in our inboxes.